Welcome back, my arcade arborists, the Green Scorpion here, and if there's one thing I take seriously, it's April Fool's Day. Most of you know the drill by now. I like to make countdowns about video games with regards to subjects completely unrelated to video games, and when April 1st comes around, rather than make a big joke about a fake video, I like to make a full-fledged video about something that's just sort of silly. Except for last year. Sorry, that was a pretty prickly month. This year, I plan to make amends by bringing to life one of the stupidest ideas Comic and I have ever pitched to each other. A top 10 all about cacti. You know what a cactus is, desert-dwelling plant covered in needles. Given their shape and spikiness, they make for an effective obstacle in any platformer or racing game, so I just figured we'd cover a bunch of these obstacles, puncturing your spacesuit in Outer Wilds, or frustrating the hell out of you in Mario Party 3. And top off the list with a few anthropomorphic cacti and call it a day. But as I researched, it became clear that I could compile enough cuddly, creepy, cunning, and cool cactus characters to complete a collection. 10 superior sentient succulents with names and personalities. Who would have thought? Well, let me do the educational thing first. Belonging to the plant kingdom, the family Cactaceae is composed of around 200 genuses and 2,000 different species of vegetation. Because of this, none of the following qualities refer to 100% of these variants, but our friend the cactus is usually recognized for its quirky yet beautiful green body. The most famous species, the ones you probably picture in your mind, are the barrel cactus and the saguaro. Most cartoon cacti take on either the thick round body of the former or the branching arms of the latter. What makes the cactus so special as a plant, however, is its evolutionary decision to forego leaves. Instead, the stem, the entire green part, takes on the role of photosynthesis. Leaves are technically better for this role, but they also create more surface area through which to lose moisture, and out in the desert there's enough sun that the stem can afford to be a little inefficient solar-wise, so instead it retains moisture in that soft, verdant flesh. What would-be leaves instead grow into quills that ward off herbivores that might try to steal all that stored water.
It'll quench ya!
Cacti can also grow flowers, which pollinate by way of bugs, birds, and wind, or sometimes pieces of a cacti just fall off and clone, leading to a thick bramble of cacti all next to each other. They're mostly native to North, Central, and South America, but over the years they've been transported all over the world, mostly for aesthetic purposes. And congratulations, now you know more than the average person about cacti. Anyway, same rules as always, must derive from a video game, only one per franchise, and only games I've played. I don't have much of a rubric on what makes a good cactus though. I'll have some fun facts along the way, but we're mostly going on vibes here, not botanical accuracy. Don't expect me to go as in-depth as usual, but then again, do. I'm long-winded and I've accepted that about myself. So put on some gloves because this is gonna get a little prickly. These are my top 10 video game cacti. Yeehaw! I said in the intro that there were enough sapient personified cacti to fill all 10 slots on this list, but that doesn't mean I have to. For our first two entries, I actually have a pair of seemingly ordinary cacti. Then again, there's nothing ordinary about a Toby Fox game. In Deltarune, there's a garden variety potted cactus on the second floor of the Dreamer household. Maybe a saguaro or a peanut cactus. At the beginning of chapter 1, Chris can examine the cactus and get this text. A cactus. Not much to say about it. Well, I beg to differ. If there's one thing I know about Toby Fox, it's that he loves to elevate mundane details into strange running gags like Papyrus' spaghetti in Undertale or the ugly Thank You design in Deltarune. These props take on a life of their own like funny pseudo-characters. And this is really important when you get into Deltarune's dark worlds. Basically, when someone creates a dark world somewhere in town, be that a supply closet or the computer lab at the library, it becomes a Narnia-like fantasy realm whose denizens, or darkners, are any objects that might be in that room. You know how in the dark you might see a sweater under the bed and you think it's a monster? Well, it operates on that kind of imaginary logic. Chapter 3 features a dark world made in Chris's own home, where Chris and friends have to placate a sentient TV man by competing in a game show and playing old video games, taking breaks in between rounds to explore the house that is now a studio. Chapter 3 is, on its surface, the silliest of Deltarune's episodes so far, but if you look at this area as a reflection of how Chris sees their home life, it becomes pretty interesting. Tenna the TV, like Chris, is desperate to get the family back together. Other enemies are little baubles Chris once used to play pretend with their brother Azrael, and of course, the cactus makes an appearance. Sort of. I guess here the cactus is a bit of a celebrity. There's statues of it in the green room, and a pixelated version appears in the first 2 rounds of Tenna's game show game. This version also blushes when you push it aside to find a secret. Huh. And if you manage to get backstage to the VIP area, a figure is behind one of the changing curtains having an existential crisis about being alive, or being able to interact with people in a more active manner. You can place your hand through the curtain and try to comfort them, but feeling very shy, it pushes you away and you get a new sword for Chris, the Saber 10. And later, if you take the sword back to the real world, it turns out to be a cactus needle. Chris accidentally touched the cactus, got a handful of needles, and interpreted it as the cactus playing hot and cold. In chapter 4, you can even look at the ordinary cactus again, and the narration states that it loves you, but only shows its sharp side. This cactus is a tsundere! This is a pretty inconsequential detail in the grand scheme of the game, but I love how this background story just keeps progressing. It's not really about the cactus as a character, but Chris's imaginative way of seeing the world, especially as someone who up until recently has felt very, very lonely. And that's the point of anthropomorphizing our belongings. It tells us more about us. Though, I'll admit, I was kinda hoping for a secret cactus boss. 9 entries to go, I guess. I've been teasing for a while about how I've gotten into Zenless Zone 0, and now I'm finally ready to give it a countdown entry, and I'm talking about a goddamn cactus. Well, I'll have more Zenless content for you later this year, but for now, let's talk about Yeye, another completely inanimate object that somehow achieves a lot of psychological exploration. I'll introduce this to you the same way he was introduced to me. My first encounter was a trust event with the agent Lighter. Essentially a support conversation, but more involved. Lighter's a rough-and-tumble ex-mercenary with a history in the underground fighting circuit, but a real sweetheart deep down. After having him in my roster for a little while, I was able to invite Lighter out to hang and recommended that we tour Blazewood, an area that Lighter clearly knows better than me, and this exchange happened. I was thinking of going to see Yeye. What's Yeye? Oh, Yeye is that cactus in Blazewood that looks like it's throwing up a peace sign. So you accept the invite, you head to Blazewood, and... yeah, I can see it. Part of what's so great about cacti is their unique arms. New stems sprout off the body and curl up towards the sun, often leading to this... peace sign pattern. Well, what gets me even more is the tire swing hanging off of it. Feels like a lot can go wrong with that. What follows is a wholesome scene where Lighter pushes you on the swing. You feel very safe, and if this was a date, Lighter is nailing it. But what's even sweeter is how Lighter casually converses with Yeye, occasionally translating to you, before undercutting himself with a "just kidding, lol." He knows this isn't strictly real, but it's real enough for him. And he'll also tell you a story he's heard about how when people die with a lot weighing down their souls, they become gods living in the cacti called Potopoto. And how when he dies, he wouldn't mind sticking around as a cactus to watch over people. By the way, I actually looked up Potopoto to see if there were any actual allusions in folklore, and I got a few hits. In some West African countries, it's a word referring to clay or muddy water. There's a 1994 puzzle game by Sega. In Peruvian Spanish, it's slang for your butt. But nothing about clandestine cacti. But Yeye and this legend does play a part in many other character events in Zenless. Zhao, Piper, Suna, Caesar, among other agents all have scenes involving this landmark. Not even counting Pan Yi-Nu, who likes to train by rapidly plucking the quills from other cacti. But I'll give you one more from the side quest called Potopoto Turned Into a Cactus. This title is a bit misleading. You witness a boy named Leaf bringing snacks as offerings to this supposed cactus god, the plant we now know as Yeye. Apparently, old Demir witnessed Leaf pushing another kid off the tire swing, and warned Leaf that the Potopoto would punish him if he didn't apologize and give offerings. Later you discover Sean, the boy he pushed, taking the snacks, told by old Demir that they were gifts from Potopoto for being a good boy. You confront old Demir about his trickery, and it's clear that this was his form of karmic justice for the two children. Even the legend itself looks like it was scribbled on some paper quite recently. And considering that this is most likely where Lighter heard about Potopoto, once again we have a probably not alive entity holding a mirror up to the people who behold him. Leaf was naughty and saw a judgmental figure. Sean needed a friend and saw a kind protector. Lighter sees the good in people and sees people in a funny shaped cactus. It's interesting stuff, valuable even if it isn't real. And Yi-Nu, I swear, if you lay a single bare hand on my Yeye, I will have words. The needles have to be near the swing, that's part of the fun. I fear we might have front-loaded the insightful content in this video. 2 entries about emotional projection, and now we're moving on to the actual characters, and the most I can say is... Cactus Monkey. Donkey Kong Jungle Beat is a weird game. I cannot stress that enough. The control style is weird, the enemies are weird, and the story does not feel the need to explain itself. Had to bust out the instruction booklet for this one. Donkey Kong has had his banana hoard stolen. Again. Again? Freaking again! This time by a bunch of evil kings. Now he's on an earth-shaking tour through the neighboring regions to punch the lights out of every fruit-snatching despot, be they muscly boars, artillery elephants, or other Kongs from the part of the family that Cranky never talks about. Actually, there is no Cranky in this game. Part of the reason why this game is so weird is because it came shortly after Rareware left the franchise, and Nintendo was trying to figure out their own unique take on DK's world. By the endgame, you think you've seen every boss copied and palette swapped already, only for the final boss to drop on you, the Cactus King. Why is the final boss cactus themed? Oh, well, why shouldn't he be? This level doesn't even have a proper name. The others are all named after fruit, Cherry Kingdom, Grape Kingdom, and so on. But this is just versus Cactus King. Well, a lot of cacti do have fruit. I guess this is the Prickly Pear Kingdom, maybe? I don't know. Then you meet the guy, and yeah, he's another gorilla-like creature with green skin, a crown of dead branches, and a strange jagged mouth. I can remember feeling so bewildered when I first saw this guy. I guess you get the same color scheme of a cactus, but he doesn't have needles or many cactian qualities that affect the fight. He's just really big, way bigger than the other Kong fist fights, and starts out the battle riding a fire-breathing pig head. Man, this game is weird, but at this point I'm just kind of along for the ride. It's hard not to get into it with these controls. It is worth noting that not all cacti have spines, mind you. In particular, the Cactus King's lair reminds me of the Bishop's Cap, a cactus without needles and a similar pale green color. If you can get enough gold medals in this game, you can also unlock an extra rematch with the Cactus King in his souped up form, the Ghastly King. Now he's more purplish and can breathe poison. Okay, so now he's like a cactus monkey ghost? Oh, wait, ghost cacti are actually a thing. The white ghost cactus. Technically, this isn't a breed of cactus at all, it's a kind of plant called a spurge, but it is sometimes called a false cactus. Is that why Cactus King doesn't have spikes? But wait a minute, the white ghost cactus does have spikes, but they're also highly toxic, which could explain Ghastly King's poison breath. I'm gonna be so real, I don't think any of this is intentional. I'm just making desperate connections to try and justify all the research I did for this video. But at the end of the day, I thought this guy was really cool when I was younger, and it's such a wild game with wild character designs in it, so maybe that's good enough for me. There are a lot of Mega Man games. Heck, there are a lot of Mega Man series, and that means there's a lot of Mega Man boss fights. The classic series has its robot masters, always with some theme and the word man or woman following. Mega Man X gave us the Mavericks, most of which were themed after animals, but that was already starting to break down by Mega Man X4, which gave us Split Mushroom. Capcom, please tell me you know that mushrooms aren't animals. Well, they're not really plants either, but anyway. So I shouldn't be surprised that by Mega Man 03, we have a stage boss that's a cactus. I should be surprised, however, that it's on the ice stage. Glacier LeCactank, yeah, really, that's his name, makes a lot more sense if you try to understand what he's been built and rebuilt for. Initially, he was built as a water tank, transporting life-saving H2O across long stretches of desert with a built-in cooling system to keep the water from evaporating. If that's the goal, a barrel cactus is the perfect inspiration for your aesthetic. They're tough, protected, and designed to hold a lot of water in a hot environment. But Cactank and 7 other blue-collar Reploid workers were selected to become the 8 Gentle Judges, a group formed by the original Mega Man X to settle cases with Reploids that may have caught the Maverick virus and lost control. The judges were organized into a Chief Judge, Vice Chief Judge, and 2 trios of lesser judges that would switch in and out for different trials. These 3 spots were referred to by the Japanese elements of wind, thunder, and ice. Cactank, being one of the 2 ice judges, took on the name Glacier. Then one day, the evil Dr. Vile infiltrated Neo Arcadia with a copy of X and corrupted the 8 judges, rebuilding their minds and bodies for his purposes. All of the judges have a more humanoid judge form and a battle-ready punishment form that they can take Transformer style. Owning up to his new ice title, Glacier turns up his cooling system to now freeze the water within him, growing needles that are more akin to icicles and proclaiming himself the king of the snow plains. So yeah, overall very silly, and I don't know where the "la" came from. I guess he's French.
Ah, the French.
But other than that, I do like the design now that I understand it better. Leaning more into his unique anatomy as a cactusy, you can start to appreciate how well this plant works as an enemy type. They naturally have arms covered in spikes, so it's not a far leap to treat them like morning stars. Cactank can also extend his arms up to the ceiling and swing his body like a wrecking ball. He doesn't need to freeze Zero directly, he just lets the natural combination of needles and icicles be the threat. You can get two fitting rewards for defeating him. The spike chip can be installed into Zero's feet to give him better traction in slippery surfaces like ice, and if you get an A rank or better, he'll drop the Orbit Shield, a great defensive EX skill. So yeah, interesting stuff all around, but I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I just think this guy's kinda neat. I was ready for him to be kinda lackluster, but I've really come around on him. That said, he's far from the last cactus we're gonna have to fight on this list. So, were those last two entries really cacti? We have a robot who was made to look like a cactus and an ape that's allegedly part cactus, but come on, all I want is a good old-fashioned cactus that also happens to be a guy. Is that so much to ask? Okay, well I guess I did ask for this. Guacamole pulls from a ton of deep-cut Mexican culture, from popular symbols like luchadores and Dia de los Muertos, to mythological deep cuts like the alebrije and the demonish Sade. But other times they just do something silly like Cactuardo from Guacamelee 2. And honestly, that name is perfect. I've complained before about how Guacamelee 2's villain group isn't as well utilized as the first game's rogues gallery, but it's honestly nice having one member that's just a big dumb joke. It's really just El Muñeco who disappointed me. Dude really deserved a rematch or a moment of redemption. To be fair though, Cactuardo is only half the equation. He's also joined by his avian advisor Zope, who pretty much does all the thinking for the two. I was trying to figure out what kind of bird Zope is, maybe a curve-billed thrasher, which does make its nest in cacti, but his name is a play on the Spanish word for vulture, zopilote, so I think he's a black vulture. They do at least perch on cacti sometimes, but I don't know. If any bird watchers have a better idea about this, please let me know. The wiki's lacking in details for these two. Maybe you can also explain why Cactuardo appears to have a noose around his neck. Is it a gardening rope for helping plants stay balanced? Is it a bolo tie? Well anyway, Zope and Cactuardo are in league with the game's big bad, Salvador, but really, Zope's on his own mission to steal a golden egg from the chicken Illuminati. Yeah, there's a lot of bird stuff in this game. Cactuardo's mainly here as Zope's muscle, and to be fair, he is good at it. You fight the two as a duo, Zope zipping around and using all the same moves that Juan can do in his pollo form, and Cactuardo's burrowing through the ground, summoning needles on the arena's perimeter, and serving as a resting spot for Zope when he needs to heal. The bird may be the brains here, but Cactuardo is the main health bar. Obviously, punching a Saguaro under normal circumstances is a bad idea, so instead, you need to wall run up high enough to knock Zope off of his perch, and Cactuardo will get stunned as if Zope really was his brain. He even retracts his needles while recoiling. It's very gamey, but Guacamelee is a fun game, and this is a very satisfying boss fight, bouncing back and forth between phases of chasing down a buzzard and avoiding AoEs. There is a lot we don't know about these two. Frankly, I'd love to know what Zope's beef is with the Illuminati. But hey, they're jokey side villains. They're here to be memorable, and memorable they are. Sorry your symbiotic relationship turned out to be toxic, big guy. Hopefully you at least got some good pollination out of it. This next one's a bit of a rabbit hole to get to. Lately, I put a lot of time into UFO 50, a collection of retro-style games. I'm not the first person to say this, but it's kind of a parody of Action 52 if all of those games were actually good.
Not this. This. Not this. Winner, loser.
Like, an anti-parody. Kinda like what I try to do with my April Fool's countdowns, actually. And although UFO 50 released in 2024, the meta-narrative is that these games are the full catalog of a fictitious 1980s company called UFOsoft. Most of the games are pretty short, but then you have Grimstone, a 20-hour RPG in the same vein as Final Fantasy I with an old Western theme. This game within a game takes place in the land of Lone Star, a human kingdom that some time ago was pulled into hell. Funny thing, some guide makers have created a zoomed out version of the world map, and it's actually Texas. That's pretty funny. You put together a posse of 4 heroes fighting against the demon lord Malice in the name of your holy god Biggin. So you travel across the fields and prairies fighting many Old West tropes and set dressings. There's bandits, tumbleweeds, buffalo monsters, but the oddest encounter you'll have isn't a single enemy. It's a scenario where you visit a neutral player in this war of good and evil, the Church of the Cactus. Buckle up, this one's a doozy. The nuns in this mission are a little loopy, and when talking to the priest, he offers you a way to seek the truth by drinking a mysterious elixir. You take it, and now you're tripping balls, transported to the cactus dimension. Yeah, you've watched Last Airbender. It's the cactus juice. It'll quench ya. Actually, if you don't mind me taking another brief aside in the name of botany, while some cacti produce hallucinogenic juices, not all of them do. In particular, the one we see Sheikah cut up in the desert is designed to resemble the fishhook barrel cactus, which is not hallucinogenic. The effect Sheikah experiences is much closer to the peyote, a small spineless species that has actually been used for spiritual rituals by Mesoamerican peoples for centuries. Now that's the quenchiest.
Okay, I think you've had enough.
But seeing as all the animals in Last Airbender are hybrids of two real-world creatures, it's actually not that hard for me to imagine a cactus with aspects of both a fishhook barrel and a peyote. Have there actually been any examples of hybrid plants in Last Airbender? I mean, if you take into account that—
Get on with it! Yes, get on with it!
Right, sorry, back to Grimstone. So, the cactus dimension is weird. The people in the church are now represented by the wrong sprites, and you walk outside to a green and purple wonderland. You're probably just shambling around in the desert, honestly. And you fight even weirder enemies than usual, and eventually your journey leads you to the head poncho, the cactus goddess, who wants to see if you're strong enough to handle the truth. And wouldn't you know it, she's an Andros boss. Now, I didn't have too much trouble with this one at the level I found her. You got 3 targets to deal with. The hands can heal the head and smash you down. The head can breathe poison, which makes sense if it's part peyote. And when you take her down, she reveals that Biggin and Malice aren't as antagonistic towards each other as you've been led to believe. Their battle is actually a game, and humanity is always the loser. So you prepare for the final leg of your adventure with a new purpose. It paints the goddess as a more caring entity towards the people of the world. In Dungeons & Dragons terms, with the angels and demons being lawful good and chaotic evil planes, this cactus cult is more reminiscent of the druids, who worship nature rather than a specific god. Now, I know that they're using the term goddess, but if I'm being really pretentious, this is a more indigenous spiritualism being pushed out by a Euro-Christian system with the guise of a good versus evil narrative, similar to what I've said about the afterlife being corporatized in Grim Fandango. I mean, there is merit to being good in your life, even if Mictlan gives you a chance to—
Get on with it!
I have got to stop doing that. My point is that I don't want to be too prickly towards any specific religions for this really vague reading, but it does at least line up with the meta-narrative of UFO 50. Grimstone is one of many games made at a time when the developers have had their doubts about the corporate powers overseeing them. Director Benedict Chun's games around this time often have a theme of the people in charge not having your best interests at heart, such as the evil mayor in Fist Hell. And if you really dig in, you can see how UFOsoft's producer Tao Nomura is stifling the quality of releases to make money and appease his own ego. Like many cacti, there's a lot of juice in here if you can get through the thorns, and it'll show you more than you ever expected.
The unique circumstances that is the cactus comes from the miracle of evolution. And in the arid regions of the mushroom kingdom, we see a perfected specimen. The pokey. So elegant, so efficient, so spherical.
There are a few breeds of spherical cacti that, rather than growing arms, tend to just drop their extra matter to grow into patches of prickle balls. Pokey's design dares to ask the question, what if we stack these balls on top of each other? I joke, but I actually think Pokey is a great design for a long-standing Mario obstacle. It's all about its strange modular biology. If you hit one of the balls, it'll just fall away, leaving the rest of the body unaffected. But if you hit the head, the whole tower comes tumbling down. Pokey wasn't originally designed to impede Mario, though. Its original appearance is in Super Mario Bros. 2, which yada yada doki doki, you know the story. Except Pokey was green in this game, like a cactus, and it also didn't have quills to hurt you with. The core of this game is picking up and throwing things, and Pokey just gives you extra parts to throw. Like many Doki Doki Panic enemies, Pokey was brought back with a new look. Super Mario World makes them yellow, matching Mario's yellow desert zones, and I like to think it's the golden quills of the barrel cactus just growing closer together. And this Pokey has more of a horned crown to communicate that you shouldn't jump on it. Now, here's a fun fact. If you encounter a Poke while riding Yoshi, it'll have 5 segments. But if Poke spawns when you don't have Yoshi, it'll only have 3 segments. This is to make sure that you can actually jump over it so you're never actually stuck. Seriously, I feel like we don't appreciate how well old Mario games were designed sometimes. Later Poke designs have a flower on their head to denote that you can hit these ones by jumping on the very top of them, and now they have pronounced green spikes, so they fully inverted the golden barrel color scheme. Pokies can do a lot of things depending on the needs of a specific game. Want them to sprout out of the ground and ambush you? Not the first cactus on this list to do that. Want them as RPG enemies using their segments as ammunition? They'll be right at home in Paper Mario. You want a boss version? Here's Mummy Poke from New Super Mario Bros. Or if a Mario Party minigame just needs a target made out of a bunch of balls that the players can go ham on, there you go, Poke. Then again, I never expected Poke to reach the same recognition status of Goombas or Koopa Troopas, but then comes along Mario Kart World with its sure why not approach to its character roster. It probably helps that a lot of these enemies already have assets as track hazards, but praise the sands, now we have cactus representation in a racing game. It's a weird choice, but you can't say it's not deserved. Poke's been around since the 80s, just as long as Birdo or Shy Guy, so why shouldn't he get to drive too? And don't say it's because he doesn't have hands, we're way past that point.
Palmon Digivolve into Togumon!
Wait, no, roll it back. I'm sorry, Digimon fans, I don't know anything about this franchise. I mean, I know there's a lot of video games, and it was a line of virtual pets before it was an anime, so it should count for my originating from video games rule. ComicFoil showed me a picture of Togumon, a giant cactus with boxing gloves. I'm sold.
I'll take your entire stock!
But after some research, this particular Digimon was invented to be Mimi's champion-level partner in the cartoon, premiering in the series. So, technically, not from video games. Pokemon wins again! I did have a bit of a choice to make here. I actually have a bit of a soft spot for Maractus, but let's be honest, it's a single-stage dex filler with no history of competitive use. There's just not a lot to go off of here. The obvious choice is the evolutionary line of Cacnea and Cacturn. Mostly Cacturn, but we can talk about them both. This pair was introduced in Hoenn, which is also home to the first desert biome in the mainline series, and we got 2 cactus breeds represented here. Cacnea resembling a stout little barrel, where Cacturn is a tall, bendy saguaro. Adding the dark type to the obvious grass, Cacturn also resembles a scarecrow and comes with a lot of creepy lore. I mean, for starters, its name is a portmanteau on cactus and nocturne. This is actually true in English and Japanese, its original name being Noctis. That's the same portmanteau with the other halves of both words. It's like etymological recycling. But the creepypasta stuff comes from the Pokedex. Cacturn roam the desert in packs, always prowling just far away that you can still see them, waiting to strike when you're exhausted from the heat. Imagine being tired and thirsty, looking over your shoulder and seeing a pack of these 4-foot-tall creeps just over the last dune, waiting to descend when you're at your most vulnerable. There's also Emerald's entry, which says its time in the desert has replaced its blood with sand, and that somehow creeps me out more. Not the sand part, just knowing that it has blood in the first place. Cheerier fans might instead remember both of these stages as recurring faces in Gen 3 of the anime. Cacnea joins James's team and enjoys hugs, continuing Victory Bell's tradition of James's Pokemon lovingly beating the shit out of him. And though less prominent, Cacturn was a mainstay for May's secondary rival Harley, who had an outfit to match. Harley was a piece of work, but I admittedly kinda wanna cosplay this. Now let's talk gameplay. Even in the relatively unremembered format of GBA Competitive, Cacturn wasn't a top-tier threat, not with the slew of great starters, legendaries, and pseudo-legendaries debuting at the same time. But in later formats, Cacturn found itself an interesting niche, being a prickly little bastard that was hard to get rid of. This era of Pokemon was dominated by weather strategies, and Cacturn was rare for being a grass type designed for sandstorm teams, giving some diversity to the teams of rock, ground, and steel. This is thanks to its ability Sand Veil, granting it an audacious plus 20% evasion bonus in sandstorms. If you're a competitive battler, you like your base 100 accuracy moves to, you know, be accurate. But not only was Cacturn dodging at the most inopportune times, it sustained itself off an infuriating move pool of Leech Seed, Substitute, and its signature Needle Arm, adding a 30% chance to flinch its target. On top of this, Cacturn had just enough speed to outpace its UU threats, and just enough defense to survive some would-be one-shots. This was just annoying enough that it got Sandvale banned in tournaments 2 generations in a row. Then Gen 4 gave Cacturn Sucker Punch, and Gen 5 added Water Absorb as a hidden ability, which is nice for switch-ins and fitting for a cactus. And then you could bait out fighting type moves with the old Focus Sash counter trick. I mean, you just tried using close combat on a cactus. What did you think was gonna happen? Its spot in competitive play may have devolved into a Desert Mirage at this point, but I think it can take solace knowing that it was an annoying menace before that banhammer dropped. And as I hit the last stretch of these vegetative entries, I realized that that's what I like in a cactus combatant. They don't have to be an overwhelming threat, they just have to be a thorn in your side. Something that reminds you to be careful and wear your gloves next time. Keep that in mind as we hit the last 2 entries. I missed out on the cactus with boxing gloves, but this list can do us better. Here's a cactus with a sombrero. As one of the biggest fighting games of its era, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was in part a repository for dozens of fighting game characters that they'd already designed for the last several years. Marvel superheroes, X-Men, Street Fighter, the other MVC, Darkstalkers. In fact, a few unique characters are said to be rejected Darkstalkers characters that they retrieved from the cutting room floor. That's the case for Captain Rubyheart, as confirmed in a developer interview, and fans suspect that might also be the case for Amingo. Seriously, look at this weirdo. He'd fit right in with Sasquatch and Rikuo. As we have him, Amingo is one of 2 truly original fighters in MVC2. 3 if you count Sansan, who is a reference to the old arcade game, and 4 if you count the game's boss, Abyss. Instruction manuals describe Amingo as a man-plant, living under the protection of a great tree and sent on a journey when a cursed wind starts killing off the plant life on his island. So Amingo joins Rubyheart on her pirate ship and fights a bunch of Marvel vs. Capcom characters along the way. Amingo's default form is a cactus, but as a man-plant, he has full phytokinetic power, able to conjure, manipulate, and transform into any type of vegetation that he desires. He'll puff his spines in and out, wrap his enemies in vines during his grabs, encase himself in a Venus flytrap for dashes, and turn into a giant onion for charging tackles. He's a feast for the eyes. Now, I would love to say that Amingo is a powerhouse character bending the meta to his will, but this is Marvel 2 we're talking about, where unrestricted matches are mostly the same 5 characters. Truth be told, Amingo is bottom tier. Not quite roll tier, but not far off. He's just a little too slow and awkward, his bulky size makes him easy to combo, and he doesn't have a lot of air game, which is a death sentence in Marvel. He does have a little zoning potential with these mini cacti he can grow, his Amingo Amigos, which he can send out and do one of 3 moves. But most other zoners are going to lock him down with more oppressive area control. Hi, Cable! As the game was meant to be played, he's kind of useless. But like Cacturn, Amingo benefits when the community regulates itself with character tiers. I love point-buy tournaments for this game, where you spend a limited number of points to make your team. Amingo often goes for 1 or even 0 points at these tournaments, allowing you to team him up with a much better character, and like all cacti, he is at his most dangerous when you aren't looking out for him. So here are the positives. Amingo has some of the best normals in the game thanks to his stretchy arms. If you can use that to switch into better characters for a combo, Amingo can be a very sharp stepping stone for your enemy's demise. When on the bench, he can assist with seeds that buff a fighter's stats, and if you can get your opponent in a corner, Amingo actually has an infinite combo. Granted, it isn't fully inescapable for everyone, but it works great on Mega Man, Colossus, and more importantly, Sentinel. This is payback for all those drones, you freaking rust bucket. And while it doesn't have quite the damage I would like, Amingo's super where he turns into a spiraling beanstalk has the added benefit of smushing him out of the way as it goes off, making it harder to counter and even an effective dodging tool. And guys, come on, look at him. Of course I play this character. He's a cheerful guy with a Latin American look, a little guitar, and a gorgeous green complexion. And he's the only cactus on this list that is fully controllable by the player. Pokey's in a cart now, and you can give commands to Cacturn, or maybe drive around in a toy version of him in the Pokemon Rumble games, but in Marvel, we can make this cactus do all kinds of crazy shit. By putting him in this game, Capcom's implying that Amingo is a reasonable challenge for the likes of Thanos and Dr. Doom. I just wish he had more appearances. Besides this, it's just cameos, a card in SNK vs. Capcom Card Fighters 2, and a background picture in Ultimate MVC 3's Days of Future Past with a bunch of other non-returning fighters. That's a good way to reference them, harking back to that classic comic issue from the... Wait, Slain? What have they done to my boy? Okay, seriously, Capcom, when you finally give us a true return to Darkstalkers, and I'm counting on you to do that, we better see this Cactus Man there. For number 1, I wanted something impactful, imposing, omnipresent, and in the end, iconic of the essence that is cactus. There can only be one choice. From Final Fantasy comes the culmination of cactus kind. You know it, you love it, part of you probably hates it. It's the Cactar. If you asked a little kid how to draw a cactus man, you'd probably get something like this. At least, this is what you get from Tetsuya Nomura doodling in his notebook in high school. No, really, that's where this design came from. A doodle in a high school notebook. Its empty eyes and mouth seem to be based on a Japanese Haniwa figure, a token of death which it very well might cause. Arms and legs at right angles, permanently tilted in a running pose. In the multiverse of high-concept science fantasy settings in this franchise, the fact that this ridiculous creature could rise to be one of the most recognizable monsters is everything I love about video games. The Cactar made its first appearance in Final Fantasy VI, roaming the deserts in the post-apocalyptic world of Ruin. Whether Kefka's magical Armageddon unleashed them or created them is anyone's guess. Early versions of Final Fantasy VI might call them by their older spelling Cactus.
Ah, the French.
Though the idea is a mix of cactus and lyre, a seemingly normal plant that reveals its insidious intentions only when it's too late. Or you could go by its Japanese name, Sabotender, a mix of the Japanese word for cactus, saboten, and pretender. Same idea, but I also like how it sounds like the word sabotage. The Cactar look less out of place as a static enemy portrait in this 16-bit game, but right off the bat, it makes an impression with its signature ability, 1000 Needles. Like the old adage, death by 1,000 cuts, Cactar sends out a barrage of spikes for 1,000 unblockable damage on a single target. It ignores defense, it can't be reflected or protected, reduced, or even dodged in most circumstances. That target is taking 1,000 damage and there's nothing you can do about it. You know, Pokemon have moves like this with Nightshade or Dragon Rage that do a set amount of damage, but it's not usually such a sizable chunk of HP. They also act fast and have great evasion, making them, pardon the phrase, little pricks to deal with. Still, adventurers have reasons to seek out these sinister succulents. They give out a lot of money and experience after their defeat, and blue mages can study them to learn the 1000 Needle spell for themselves, which is basically a Control-Alt-Delete command for small enemies. Quickly reaching the same acclaim as creatures like the Tonberry and the Malboro, the Cactar and variants thereof return for Final Fantasy VII and all of its spin-offs, Final Fantasy VIII where it's a summonable guardian force, and Final Fantasy IX where it can also cast Confuse. In Final Fantasy X, there's a whole society of the little fuckers, and there's a side quest to seek out the 10 Cactar gatekeepers to earn Riku's celestial weapon. Then in 10-2, the Cactar Nation is at war with its own insurgent Cactar outcasts, and they have to do battle with their nemesis, a really tough super boss. Oh, and they're weak to water magic. The Pokemon Cacturne didn't have this problem, but I guess it is really easy to overwater a cactus. But anyway, I do appreciate the fact that even though we're in 3D now, no attempt is made to update the Cactar's basic design. Like seriously, who would want to change this adorable Emerald Running Man? Well, Final Fantasy XI, that's who. I'm sorry, that ain't right. Final Fantasy XII has a cuter design at least, but Cactar fans rejoice when they return to their classic look in Final Fantasy XIII's Grand Pulse. From here on out, Final Fantasy really embraced the lunacy of this creature, with its elementary design juxtaposed with an increasing graphical fidelity of the main series. Final Fantasy XIII highlights this with cutscenes of Saz trying to catch one of the little pickles. I mean, look at this run cycle, how can you not love that? And Saz, seriously, you should be glad that you couldn't tackle it, that would probably hurt. Oh, and I didn't even get to the supersized Saguados yet. Let's rewind a bit. So back in the Game Boy Advance release of Final Fantasy VI, there's an added trick that if you keep fighting Cactars, eventually you'll encounter the Gigantar, the real Cactus King. Turning the dial up to 10, it bursts out its new signature move, 10,000 Needles. And it's exactly what it sounds like. Well, to be more descriptive, it's 1,000 needles cast 10 times randomly across your party members. Better make sure you have more than 10,000 HP amongst your warriors, or don't even try. So fast forward to Final Fantasy XIII, and Saz, what the hell have you wrought? Final Fantasy XIV even has enemies using 100,000 needles, and then they're back in 15, the 7 remakes, but then we're unceremoniously cut from 16, and I'll never forgive Square Enix for that. There's a single throwaway line about an island of cactoid people somewhere out there, but that's not gonna cut it for me, you cowards. Maybe Final Fantasy XVI was too realistic for the slightly off-balance flora, but Final Fantasy has done a ton of crossovers, and the cactars are quick to cross over with them. A giant cactar display in Kingdom Hearts 3 is simple enough, not to mention the gummy ship design, but how about them walking around during your hunt in Monster Hunter? Or what if they bald? That's right, Cactar is playable in Mario Hoops 3-on-3, and comes back for Mario Sports Mix, and they didn't add a single point of articulation. It's as rigid as ever. And more recently, Magic the Gathering did a really great Final Fantasy crossover set. It's a real love letter to the entire series, representing all 16 mainline games. And what's this? The Jumbo Cactar, a 1/7 creature that, when it attacks, increases its own power to 10,000 using its classic signature ability. May I remind you that 20 damage is enough to instantly end a game. This card is so stupid. So yeah, a fairly unthreatening obstacle that becomes a huge threat if you don't tread carefully. That is how the cactus do. Look, this was always going to be an extremely subjective list. We're making really dumb comparisons here, but you know what? I think my number one is impossible to argue against. And I'm ready to give you 1,000 reasons as to why. I'm the Green Scorpion. Drop your favorite cacti carefully in the comments below, and I hope you have a fun and responsible April Fool's Day. Remember, if people don't laugh, you didn't tell the joke right. See you guys next time. Ow! Damn it, pricked my hand there.